Hey guys, it's Tobin. Thanks for checking out the channel. Coming to you from Sin City. I actually got a view this time. It'd probably be more useful if I could show you guys the view, but I actually got a view this time. Normally when I get a room at the New York, I'm doing one of these radio rows for boxing. Normally I'm basically looking at air ducts, but I actually got a nice little view of the T-Mobile Arena. Looks like a good home for a future NBA franchise over here. On the way over from MIA, watched the Miami Heat get worked pretty badly today by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Best team in the Eastern Conference. Yes, they were resting Darius Garland today. They got a back-to-back. Donovan Mitchell did not need him. Donovan Mitchell, reason we all wanted him down here. That guy's good. And he was very clearly the best player on the floor tonight. I mean, really just was filthy to Miami today on both ends. I mean, there was a point where he hit a three and then, stole the ball from Tyler Herro just to snuff out any last piece of momentum that Miami might have. I would say a couple things about this game that just stand out immediately. One, domination in the paint and on the glass from the Cleveland Cavaliers. And, this was like a classic Bane game where it's like, the Miami Heat, you merely adopted tall time. I was born in it. And that's what it felt like. You saw two bigs really clog up the paint. They have a lot of great chemistry with it. But you're also seeing on Miami's end, I don't want this to be a deterrent on anybody, okay? Kel'el Ware had a rough one today. It was not his best performance. Guys, you got to get in your head right now. This is a young team now. This is a team that is now trying to find its new identity, find its roots, get past the Jimmy Butler era. There are going to be ones where they get chin checked. Those nights are going to happen to the young guys. And that was the night it was for Kel'el. There was a little bit of hesitancy. There was not enough impact on the glass. And I think that, is going to be one of those things where Erik Spoelstra is just never going to be satisfied, and that was the thing he really hit home today, that they have to find solutions, that it was just not good enough today. And I agree with him. I think watching this performance, I think that Spo, really wanted to make the point that they have to, he said afterwards, we're a bigger front court now. There's no excuses to have a game like this. And really, if you look up and down, the only guy who seemed to make any kind of impact on the glass was Bam Adebayo, who is definitely more comfortable in this spot, but it also is going to come with some growing pains. And I think Bam had a more measured look at it, where as a captain, he said after the game, like, "Hey, look, this is a young kid. This is a small sample size." I thought it was encouraging words from Bam, where he's like, "This is a small sample size. This kid he's going to learn. He's learning on the job." We did not get to see Tall Time 2.0. We did not get to see all three bigs out there, though I thought Nico had some nice moments for the Miami Heat today. Really, I mean, they were drowning offensively in the first quarter of this game. Really, really bad. I mean, they couldn't even get in the paint, couldn't sniff the paint for a while. It was literally like, I think a three from Bam, a three from Terry, and a three from Duncan, and then it was just like 24-second violations, and I'm just furious. I'm like, I wanna punch the guy in the seat in front of me. Although I did luck out, I did get a full row to myself on the flight over here, which was I thought pretty impressive for being in Group 8. So. Yeah, that first quarter was a rough watch. The bright side, I think, offensively for Miami, you're starting to see some signs of life from Terry Rozier. I think that is an encouraging thing. Like, at least he still, you don't really trust that three-point shot quite yet. But, I think for what Spo was saying, a crowded paint, and interestingly enough, probably one of his signature games last year did come against the Cavaliers. He's an Ohio guy. I don't know if that has any rhyme or reason to it, but Terry, found himself a little bit today in this performance. Tyler got off to a really, really rough start. You could see the frustration was getting to him. There was a point in the third quarter where he actually got teed up and then took that rage and really brought Miami back into the game, which I thought was a damn good showing for Tyler because it really wasn't going his way. He was getting harassed on the other end from Cleveland. They were making it a point of focus to bother him, and he really flipped a switch, especially at the end of that third quarter. Brought Miami to within 10. They got it to 8, and then it just felt like any time they weren't perfect, Cleveland just had a 7-0 run waiting on them to just extend that lead back to 14, 15, 16, and then you're back on the hamster wheel. So that was a tough thing. It wasn't one of these games where there are 18-point games you feel like you can get back into, 18, 15-point deficits. This one kind of felt like Miami really had to hit some haymakers just to even get close. Like, for example, they scored 43 points in the third quarter, but they gave up 35. There just never was a point that they could make the impact defensively to slow down Cleveland. Cleveland killed them in the paint today. Look at this differential. Points in the paint tonight. Where the hell is that number? 68-38. Jeez Louise. It was a bludgeoning in there for sure. But yeah, this is not one of those games. I think in different times, I think you could say, hey, matchups like Cleveland are a good measuring stick. It's a test. It is a test, and it's a test that they just showed. Hey, they basically barely, they barely got a D today. They barely avoided failing today is what I would say. But that's just a team in a different weight class right now to Miami. It really is. And that's okay from my standpoint. I'm not going to sit here and excuse losses because there are things that they have to do better. But they went into this game, I think they were an 8-point underdog. This was not a game they were, I think, expected to win. They got off to a really bad start. They showed a little bit of fight in them, but they couldn't afford mistakes. Otherwise, they were going to get blown out. On the other end of things, by the way, I should mention Max Strus with this new long, luscious mane of hair. What happened to you, dude? This guy changed. I mean, this guy used to just be all business. Now he's got a big fat contract, gorgeous hair. He's got bachelorettes sliding into his DMs. Very annoying. It reminds me of Jack Parkman from Major League, where it's he does the little shimmy. Rest in peace, of course, to the late Bob Uecker. It makes the women here in Cleveland go crazy. And then he goes to the White Sox. He does that little shimmy. It makes the women here in Cleveland puke. That's what it feels like with Max Strus. Adorable, now has that annoying, very thick mane of hair. It's disappointing. Speaking of hair, I will give one thing that definitely has to be a point of concern today, and that is Jaime Jaquez Jr. Does feel like this season for him is just a little bit in the mud. There's been regression for sure. I give part of it to, hey, if anybody on this team has been affected just from a basketball perspective on the ins, the outs of Jimmy Butler, the changes in the lineup, it certainly is Jaime. And I really thought that Jaime was going to take to sixth man a little bit better than he has, but he hasn't. And I don't know. I don't know what that is. He's had those games in the road trip, a couple road trips ago where he started and he looked really, really good. The problem is I think for some guys it's easy to tell when they're a little flustered and they don't have their confidence. And I just think with him parked in the corner, he's just not a guy that can do anything from there with confidence. He's just so clearly bothered with taking that shot. And then it's that hesitancy almost ruins it. This is a guy who was so pure to watch with that footwork last year and had a lot of confidence. And anytime you think you had a move, he had another move. And now he just looks lost. He just looks lost, and I think that this is definitely hitting a critical level of concern for him to find himself. He only played 7 minutes today. It was a bad 7 minutes. He basically got 7 minutes of cardio. He missed just 3 shots. And then Spo went with Pella in the second half. And Pella didn't score a bucket today, but Pella made an impact. And that, I think, is the big thing that Spo is going to put out here. Is like, hey, if you're not scoring, can you make an impact on things? And I think that's going to be the lesson for Kel'el, too. Like, hey, Kel'el, if you have a game where the buckets aren't coming easy for you and you're not stroking it from downtown, can you make an impact? And that is the lesson for these young guys, where it's like, hey, just because you're not having your shot fall, can you make that impact? Can you continue to impact winning? And I just think with Jaime right now, it just feels like a place that is, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there for him. This is, of course, the week where he got sent to the Rising Stars game. And I don't know, man. It doesn't feel like he's earned that honor from that standpoint. So, we'll see. Look, this is obviously, like I said, I don't want to make any sweeping stuff. Cleveland is a juggernaut. You got one win against them this year. Yes, that was a very different look. Kel'el wasn't even on playing that game. Jimmy Butler was on the team. But this is one of those games where, you hope you could take the lessons, and then you hope it can benefit you when you get out on the road. They got a road trip, a 4-game trip. They're going to be on the road a lot this upcoming month. In fact, so February they're done for January, and so January they finished. What was their record? They were 3 over, and they finish at 500. They're back to 23-23 for the end of January. But yeah, this upcoming month, they basically only have one home game. Yes, there is All-Star in the middle of that. They have a home game after a 4-game road trip. San Antonio, Chicago, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, and then they come home for a Boston matchup, and then OKC, and then Dallas. We'll see what Luka's health status is. Then we have the All-Star break, and then you have 3 more road games: Toronto, Milwaukee, Atlanta, then Atlanta at home, the Pacers at home. So they have 3 home games this upcoming month. They're going to be on the road a lot. Look, I think they've shown an ability they can go win on the road. I would really like it if, it's probably greedy, but if Miami can go into that Boston game, if they can be 3-1 on this trip, I think that would really show something. Obviously, you have the Victor Wembanyama rematch coming up on Saturday at 5. Maybe that's 8:30. I just realized all my times are different. I'm like, wait, that's a lot of early games. I realized my computer has switched over to Pacific time. So Saturday night, then they got the Bulls. They got a couple days off, and they got the Bulls. They got a back-to-back in Philly. Who knows with that team? And then Brooklyn, who's obviously terrible. So, yeah, I would say you got to go 2-2 on the trip. But if you can go 3-1, I think that'd be a real feather in your cap before going into that Boston matchup. And that'll be the next time and see, like, hey, can they take the lessons from this Cleveland loss? Can they take it on the chin? Can they improve off of that, especially the young guys? I think the encouraging thing is, for Tyler, started off rough, was able to find his way in a big moment to give Miami a little bit of life. Bam does seem like he's starting to find his offensive game a little bit, so that's encouraging. He's been rebounding with Kel'el out there. That has definitely helped his boards. And then, can the young rookie bounce back a little bit? I'm excited to see how he takes this test. Obviously, there's going to be a big-time bullseye on his back when he comes into this next game against Wembanyama because, he took Wembanyama's lunch money this last game. So I'm excited to see, what he does with that test. And I would like to see Tall Time 2.0 once again. I hope that's not on the shelf just for one game. I do think that's a fun game. I think that the Heat do need to have guys who can create. I just like the dynamic of it. I understand this is a bit of a wonky game, and you were playing catch up and you're just trying to find things. So I'm not crushing Spo for not using it today, but I hope it's not completely shelved. And then finally, the last piece of news that we got to look into is I should give a shout out. Haywood Highsmith had a really good start of the third quarter that, really sparked the good offense for Miami in that quarter. But, man, they just couldn't do they, to Cleveland, Spida was incredible. Evan Mobley, I mean, dude, that guy's footwork. You want to talk about footwork. That dude was working it inside today. He was awesome for Cleveland. And then, for their role guys, they got good punch today from Jerome. They got a good game from Niang. Just too easy on them. Miami really just could not make a defensive impact on this game at all. And even in those spurts, like it couldn't just gather and get on a big time run to really even it up. They weren't there today. But tomorrow, as I record this, it's getting kind of late over on the East Coast. But once the news tomorrow, Tyler Herro will go out and see if he's going to be an all-star. He did say he's very nervous for it. So I read his quotes in Anthony Chang's article in the Miami Herald. And, he was mentioning some nerves, and he hasn't been that anxious about something since draft night. You wonder a little bit if, this was a big-time matchup for him. Not that the voting was kind of, it is what it is. But you wonder if maybe if there was a little bit of that going on for him. I'm not sure. Don't want to take credit away from Cleveland. They're obviously great, but it just took him a while to get going. Not overreacting to it too much. I see some of these social media calls as Alec Burks need to get more minutes. I think Alex are really, I think he's been as pro as it can get. Look, if Jaime's got to ride the pine for a little bit, I don't think that's crazy because we've seen it happen to Nico. We've seen it happen to Kel'el. He's not above that, and you saw a little bit of it today. We'll see. But the thing with Burks is, again, he's a veteran. The Heat are going to lean young, I think. So if you're going to lean young, even with Jaime, you got to let him kind of take his lumps and see if he could figure this thing out right now and see, where he's going to be at. I don't think you completely freeze him out, and especially on a road trip like this where you're not going up against any juggernauts on this trip like you just took on. So we'll see how Miami bounces back from it. But today didn't perform up to snuff with the Cleveland Cavaliers. They got worked.